North Korea's nuclear test. This time, it's the Navy's turn. They're testing their capabilities and their readiness in the event of a war. We've already seen from the Army and the Air Force, South Korea also testing its own ballistic missiles. But what we're hearing coming from North Korea this morning is that they could be preparing for another ballistic missile test. This is coming from South Korea's National Intelligence Service saying they've detected the movement of a projectile they believe could be an intercontinental ballistic missile. And this is important because this would be the first ICBM test since last Sunday's announcement when they said that they could put a nuclear weapon on top of an ICBM. And that nuclear test was a hydrogen bomb, which they also said would fit on top of an ICBM. But for South Korea, they are still trying to show a tough stance towards the North with cooperation with the United States. In a phone call between President Moon and President Trump, President Moon said that he wants more U.S. weapons at the tune of billions of dollars, also talking about lifting the limit of their ballistic missile program. Right now, they can have a cap of 500 kilograms. They want that lifted so they can develop more advanced ballistic missiles. Dave?
5 p.m. there in Seoul and Lee live for us. Thank you.
On top of the strong words at the Security Council, the head of the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency is saying North Korea has evolved from a regional menace to a global threat.
More on the diplomatic efforts to cool tensions on the Korean Peninsula. Let's bring in Chief International Correspondent Kristi Amanpour live for us in London. Great to have you on.
Good morning.
All right, let's talk about Russian President Vladimir Putin. Just said that sanctions are useless and ineffective and compared the North Koreans to Iraq. Is Putin's view, scary as that may be, shared among others in the international?
Well, not really, but President Putin and President Xi Jinping of China are sort of on the same page, while the rest of the UN Permanent Five at the Security Council, the United States, France, Britain, they are all wanting to put more pressure, sanctions, diplomatic pressure, cutting off financial flows into North Korea, trying to cut off the lifeblood that North Korea uses to build up its nuclear arsenal. So yes, these Permanent Five members, the world's big powers, seem to be split right now, which is something that certainly regional leaders say is sending the wrong signal. Everybody has to be on the same page in order to give a united and clear message to North Korea that this continued provocation or build-up and threats will not be tolerated. So, the next question is what to be done and what can the international community expect? Well, we've been told by the Japanese ambassador to UN and also by the former U.S. Energy Secretary Ernest Moniz that yes, diplomatic and financial pressure should be kept up, but there should be some way of eventually getting to some kind of negotiated settlement and some kind of deterrence. And also, as we speak, we're not entirely sure what exactly precisely that device was that they tested on Sunday. Some are saying it may not be the hydrogen bomb that North Korea claimed, but it may be some kind of boosted atomic device. Listen to what Ernest Moniz told me.
I have to say that yesterday's nuclear test, obviously, it's a great concern, but I do want to emphasize it does not establish the statement made necessarily that they have the capability to actually deliver such a weapon on a long-range missile, number one. And number two, qualitatively, they already had demonstrated their ability with nuclear explosives. So to me, I'm reluctant to have an overreaction to yesterday's event, as opposed to keep turning up the pressure, as I say, and get into discussions that can actually resolve the security environment in that part of the world.
So, Dave and Allison, you can imagine that many of the world leaders are having conversations by phone with President Trump. There's a lot of dialogue going on about how best to move forward on this. And at the same time, you have, as Ian Lee just reported, the South Koreans believing that maybe the North Koreans are getting ready to move or somehow operate yet another ICBM. And you also have reports inside South Korea's parliament that the defense secretary, under some tough questioning, said that he would be willing to consider a plan for a potential deployment of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons in South Korea. So this is, a very, very dangerous situation. As you heard Mr. Amano, the head of the IAEA there in Vienna, saying that this is now a global threat. It's not just a regional emergency, and there must be a united international community response to get a clear message to.
Other suggestions coming from China and Russia are a freeze for freeze plan where North Korea would freeze its nuclear development in exchange for the freeze of joint American-South Korean drills. The U.S. has already dismissed it. What do you think? Are there any other ways North Korea would be able to actually come to the table?
Well, here's the thing. That is what was proposed by President Xi and President Putin in July during the last sort of ratcheting up of the tension and the crisis. And of course, the United States and its allies rejected that because what it means is getting rid. Essentially, North Korea wants to get rid, and so does China, by the way, diminish U.S. military presence in not just the peninsula, but in the Pacific region as well. So the U.S. says that is a non-starter, certainly at this moment. But Secretary Moniz said that you can't just focus on the nuclear issue with North Korea. You must be able to focus on sort of broader issues, like their desire to have a peace treaty, to end the 1950s Korean War, their desire to rebuild their economy, the need to get them into some kind of posture of deterrence and containment. All of this is going to require actual talks and negotiations once they are brought to the table with sufficient diplomatic pressure to understand that there is no room for any more of this kind of provocation. Of course, the big unknown is what their motive is. People are still trying to figure that out. And are they potentially about to blunder into some kind of miscalculation? That is the big fear right now.
All eyes on the peninsula on Saturday on that national holiday in North Korea. Kristi Amanpour, thanks so much for the insight and analysis.
Thanks very
Always
much.
great to have you. All right, ahead, the Trump administration expected to announce today it will end this program for young undocumented immigrants called Dreamers, but reportedly they'll give Congress a chance to fix it. Can they? Discuss that next with Chris Deaton, the Weekly Standard. Later today, President Trump expected to announce his decision to end DACA. That's the Obama-era program that protects so-called Dreamers, young undocumented immigrants